Now, there's been a significant development, a little milestone along the way of the Indigenous voice to Parliament today, and that is that the government's machinery bill, the referendum machinery bill that puts all the process of the mechanics to run this referendum in place, it's actually passed through the lower house of Parliament. What's interesting about that, it's got to get through the Senate yet, of course, but what's interesting about that is all of the coalition members voted against that bill. What does that mean? Well, let's find out. We'll catch up with CLP Senator for the Northern Territory, Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price. Good to talk to you again, Jacinta. You're, of course, in the Nationals party room, and your party is up front and has been out there for many, many weeks saying it will oppose the voice. The Liberals haven't made up their minds yet, but does opposing the machinery bill suggest they're going to oppose the voice?
Look, I think the machinery for referendum is a separate issue to the voice itself, because it speaks to not just this referendum, up-and-coming referendum, but obviously referendums into the future, and that is the main concern. So for the coalition, we want for there to be an official yes and no campaign, and for those campaigns to receive equal funding, which is only fair, which also allows for transparency in terms of donations and provides a better democratic process as far as we're concerned, which is why it was voted against by the coalition in the lower house.
This is the sticking point. I think the government has said they're happy to fund a yes and no pamphlet to go to everyone, but the coalition wants a few $1 million for either side to run their campaign, and the government say they won't do that. There's been some furphies around saying that you can't get tax deductibility from one side and the other. That's nonsense. Both sides will be able to do that. But why is it important that there's multi-million-dollar campaigns run from either side?
Well, because it ensures that Australians are equally provided the opportunity to be well informed before they go to the ballot. It also provides oversight from the AEC in terms of donations as well that go through, and it stops things like foreign interference from occurring as well, which is really important. I mean, we're not just looking at this particular referendum, but referendums into the future. We want to be able to have a well-informed, watertight referendum that doesn't allow for things like foreign interference, where there's oversight in terms of donations, and to ensure that Australians are receiving the right information, not receiving misinformation, and it's all above board, basically. It's simple stuff, really.
And who would control or adjudicate on the messaging going out from either side? Because if it's publicly funded, you don't want misinformation spread with these public funds. And on the yes side, you could have people saying that there's nothing to this, it's just a matter of constitutional recognition, or it's going to fix every problem in the world. On the no side, you've got people saying this is going to be racially divide the nation and deliver some sort of apartheid in Australia. How do you get someone to sort of make sure that public funds are spent on reasonable arguments?
Look, I think in traditional terms, the previous referendum that have been held in Australia, that it's been the responsibility of parliamentarians to provide that information within those pamphlets for those that oppose and those that are for in referendums. And I think that's an appropriate way to go forward, because as parliamentarians, whenever we're drafting legislation, bills, those sorts of things, there's a process of which we have to go through. There's oversight in terms of what we're drafting to ensure that everything's above board, it's appropriate information. So I don't see why that wouldn't be the case here.
Now, when it comes to the Yes campaign, I think it's almost been absent. It's just been AWOL. I'm not aware of a Yes campaign. It hasn't crossed my path. And as for Anthony Albanese and Linda Burney, I just think there's been no leadership in terms of trying to explain to the public what a voice would do, what it would look like, and why they should get behind it. They've just gone for the vibe of the thing. You're the leading advocate, I would say, on the no side, and certainly one of the prominent figures. You're seeing the polling creep back from almost 2/3 support for the Indigenous voice to just barely over half now. Why do you think that is happening?
Well, because I think the Prime Minister has failed to provide the detail that Australians are asking for. It's very vague. Australians want to have all the information before them. They want to know exactly what it is that they're voting on. At this stage, that's not really clear for them. I mean, it's about as clear as mud. And in terms of the argument that, I'm certainly putting forward on the no side is outlining the facts, basically, from the information that we've been given, and the information changes from week to week. And the fact of the matter remains is that it's actually a very concerning prospect going forward, and that certainly this is a referendum that looks to amend our constitution to divide us along the lines of race, because it is specific to Aboriginal Australians, and Australians aren't silly. They don't want to be, I guess, divided along the lines of race, and they don't view all Aboriginal people as in need of special measures, because there are those of us who are clearly leading successful lives.
Absolutely.
And perhaps they just want to take care of Australians on the basis of need.
We'll have to come back to some of those discussions later. As you know, I have a slightly different take on them. But we're out of time. Thanks so much for joining us. It's always great to talk.